Hello and welcome to another episode of the CIRS Group podcast. I'm Barbara,
And I'm Jacie.
and today we have a long-awaited, much requested, well, especially by me, by us, guest on today's show, the wonderful, the amazing, the OG CIRS health coach, Jenny Johnson. She'll be joining us shortly, but before she does, I want to first say none of this should be considered medical advice. Please take this as information and education, and of course, consult with your own CIRS doctor or your own CIRS coach, whoever you're working with, before you make any changes to your treatment. But before we bring her on, I just want to give her a good intro. Jenny Johnson is a physical therapist and board certified health coach. She is the founder of Simplified Wellness Designs, LLC, where she works with CIRS clients virtually as a coach, consultant, and patient educator. Jenny helps CIRS clients understand and advocate for their unique medical needs, access the most up-to-date resources, connect with community, and optimize their inner and outer terrain to support recovery and resilience to relapse. Jenny has been a proficiency partner with Surviving Mold since 2019 and is now training other coaches and allied health professionals, along with Jane Prescott, to be proficient in CIRS care through her faculty position at the CIRSX Institute and the CIRSX Coach and Consultant course.
And when Barbara says she's the OG, she is the OG, the very first coach to ever get certified as a proficiency partner through Shoemaker. So very exciting to have her here. Let's get started. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jenny. We are so grateful to have you here.
Well, it is an honor to be a part of your show, and I'm so excited for this conversation. Thank you.
Long overdue. I'm very excited for this. And if for those of you who remember the CIRS Summit, we got to work with Jenny quite a bit on that massive project. So that was a lot of fun last year. But this episode, yeah, we've been wanting Jenny on the podcast for a while. So I'm so happy you're finally here. It's exciting.
I'm excited too. Thank you for inviting me, you guys.
Yeah.
So to kick us off, the question we always like to ask is, how did you get involved in CIRS?
That's such a good question. And my answer is actually going to be similar to probably many of your speakers, although all of the nuances are different and unique. So many of us in the CIRS professional community got here because we've had our own experience with it. I don't know of anyone who just like rolled out of bed one day and was like, I really think mold is cool. I'm going to start working with like people who've gotten sick from biotoxins. Like we have to have had some kind of experience, whether ourselves, our family members, a close friend, to really see what an unmet need this is, and how important and how I guess how satisfying it can be too to support people along such a weird and wonky illness. But yes, I had CIRS. It was almost 10 years ago now. It was my family and I went through this 2015 through 2018 was kind of our window. My husband actually got it before that. He started with Lyme disease, which then turned into CIRS Lyme and water damage building exposure. We figured all of that out over time. But yeah, our whole family of four was down for the count. We kind of fell like dominoes. We all had very different symptoms and presentations. It was such a whole person and devastating illness. It touches our physical body, as we all know, our emotions. It brings up a lot of trauma. If we weren't traumatized before, we probably are now because of so many of the losses and griefs that ensue. Mentally and cognitively, it impacts us. Vocationally, if we can't work anymore, which is the case with both my husband and myself. Community wise, when like your friends and your people don't really know how to support you or maybe struggle to believe you, there's just so many aspects of suffering that can go along with this. So when our family did recover, I wanted to be part of the solution, help people maybe not go through as rocky of a journey that I had so that they too could, get to the healing point or the end line without so many of the collateral damages that our family experienced.
Yeah, and it sounds like then did your whole family go through it and also all heal within that 3 year period or so? Or would you say it lasted a little longer? How did that final like end point that you're saying, where did that
Yeah.
come in for each of you or for
Yeah.
you
So
specifically?
It was different for each one of us. My husband was sick the longest, but that's because we didn't know about the Shoemaker Protocol for a long time. And he was the one with CIRS due to Lyme. And he had acute Lyme disease that we treated, turned into chronic Lyme disease. We had no idea that we were in a building with a Hertz me of a 34. And so he was bedbound as with multi-susceptible genetics in a really high exposure home. And so he was accruing all of the toxins, the Lyme and tick-borne toxins and the biotoxins from the home, and not getting well. And so his situation took a lot longer. He was 3 or 4 years into his active Lyme treatment before we even learned about mold and that we needed to move out of our building or out of our home. So for him, once we did that, he turned around really quickly because he had done all of the Lyme treatment. He really just needed to get into a clean building and detox everything. He had a really unique situation. There was a big spiritual component to his story. We won't get into now. Maybe it'll be another podcast episode. But he turned around really quickly. He actually got off disability within like 6 months of getting onto the Shoemaker Protocol and moving, which
Wow.
is incredible. He'd been on disability for quite a while. So his situation was really unique. Mine probably took the longest. I'll share a little bit about my son's first. My son, he had some very acute symptoms when he started going to a new school, and that I think was the trigger for him. The school was even in worse condition than our home at the time. And when we took him through the protocol and we moved, his acute symptoms resolved really quickly. He was 10 years old at the time. I'm seeing a lot of kids bounce back quickly. I would say within 6 months, his labs normalized and he was feeling fantastic.
That's
But
cool.
what was interesting is that another year into it of some additional therapies actually reversed his neurodivergence. He was on the autism spectrum. We would call it Asperger's. I don't even think that's a term anymore. But he no longer had any of those presentations after, I would say, a year and a half total of the Shoemaker Protocol, plus some additional things. I think taking that neuroinflammation off of his plate allowed some of these other therapies to really suddenly take root. So he became a whole new person within a year and a half.
That's so cool.
My situation was a little different. Again, all of us had different presentations with our CIRS. I recovered. It took me kind of the longest, but I noticed that like one symptom at a time would kind of normalize. Like the first thing to return back to normal, I had these horrible PMS symptoms. And like for about 3 to 5 days before my cycle every month, I would feel like I had a terrible flu, like brain on fire. I felt like it was literally prickling. I think like my eyes would burn, terrible migraine. I would just have to lie in bed for 3 to 5 days. And it was kind of my herald every month. Like I just knew what it meant. But this was new for me. It was like within like 2 years, maybe, like this became a big life experience for me every month. As soon as we moved and I got on the Shoemaker Protocol, that was the first thing to go away. I didn't have any of that anymore. That's just an example. Sorry if that's TMI, but
No,
some people may relate to that.
it's great
There were other
info.
things
Yeah.
that like took a little longer. So my insomnia, that took probably 2 full years to really get back to like a decent circadian rhythm. I don't know if that had to do with my MSH taking a while to come back or just I gotten in a pattern, of not sleeping well and I needed to do some brain retraining on how to sleep properly. So I would say about 2 years of reeling all of the symptoms back in, but I felt some symptom relief, within the first month. So it's hard to say, like somewhere within a month to 2 years, right?
Yeah. I feel like JC and I have a kind of similar situation where we felt the positive effects of the
Yeah,
binders and being out of exposure within like 4 to 6 weeks. But
yeah,
obviously that's just the start. There's lots more to
right,
heal, lots more symptoms. Some symptoms you don't even realize you have because the other ones were so loud that kind
right.
of come to the surface and start to go away too. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
So a question we get a lot is, we have these genes that make us susceptible to CIRS. And so very often people will ask us, can you heal from CIRS? And it's kind of this two-part answer of yes, but we would love your take on that. Would you label yourself as healed? And what does healed mean to you?
ooh, that is such a fun question. That we could talk about that the entire time, I think. I do consider myself healed because I don't have any symptoms anymore. And I think to meet the diagnostic criteria, they're the symptom clusters. We have to have symptoms that are consistent with CIRS and then labs and suspected exposures. So I don't have any symptoms anymore. I have some symptoms of other things, but not that they're not CIRS symptoms. Or if I did have one flapping around symptom, it may be only one, and that's not enough to diagnose CIRS.
Right.
My labs, we check our labs every year in our family, just because, like you said, Jacie, with a genetic susceptibility, we know that even though none of us are symptomatic anymore, we could have a relapse at any time. Our genes may still be primed. And so we don't want to go through all of that again. So just to keep keep tabs on things, we will do our labs about every year, do VCS tests kind of periodically if we're not feeling very well, and just see, am I falling? And there was one period there where my labs didn't look good. And so I got back on treatment for maybe about 6 or 8 months, I did CSM again, checked the environment, got on the Actino protocol, and got everything back in order. So I think, just saying I don't have the lab presentation anymore and don't have the symptoms, I still have the dreaded genes. So I know that I could have a relapse, or at least I think I do. Sometimes I think this is a piece of good news that my functional medicine doctor gave me. He said, any gene that is modifiable, meaning if it can be primed or turned on, it can also be unprimed or turned off. A gene is either modifiable or it's not. So, like, if you have brown eyes, you're always going to have brown eyes. That's not a modifiable gene. But the CIRS genes are modifiable. So, theoretically, anyway, that means, like a dimmer switch, we could dial it up or dial it down. And so, most of my practices now are based on ways that we can influence our gene expression, where I don't know if it's turning down or turning off my HLA-DR, but I know that these are anti-inflammatory epigenetic switches that maybe are cultivating conditions for not having a really relapse, whether that's with the genetics, specific to CIRS or other genes. That's what I'm excited about.
That's super exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that idea. I mean, you kind of went through some of the testing that you continue to do since you've healed and that you and your family do. What would you like, how would you describe life post protocol? Is there, still precautions that you take? Do you kind of just wing it when you go on a trip and just take binders when you get home? Or what does that routine look like for
Yeah.
you?
We've had different layers of that reality, I think. So we're about 8 years post recovery. And I would say for the first 2 years, like that inner layer closest to being sick, we were the most careful. Like, we really didn't go anywhere. We were really protective of our baby wellness.
Yeah.
We just didn't want to take the risks. And so if we did go somewhere, we would test it first, make sure that it had a Hertz me of 10 or less. We would bring our air purifier, bring our binders, but we didn't go anywhere that we didn't test. And even our kids' schools, we tested every single classroom. We were really careful. They didn't go play at their friends' houses. Their friends came here. And then it was about a year and a half, 2 years into our recovery, and we were all feeling really well. It was almost like we started to forget that, like, we just started to kind of loosen the edges on all of these things. And I think something happened. Like, we had to go somewhere. We didn't have time to test it, and we went, and it was fine. I have a vague memory that, like, we even went somewhere where it didn't smell that great. And we're like, oh my gosh, we're getting exposed. We came home and we took binders and we were all fine. And I think kind of this experience of accidentally being outside of the bubble made us realize that maybe we were more resilient than we thought. And so we just started kind of like loosening up a little bit and pretending that we're normal. And it's actually worked out. And I don't mean like not taking precautions. So I still, I'll look up in the ceiling when I go to the grocery store or a doctor's office. I kind of like look around. If it's really bad, I leave. If we check into a hotel that I haven't vetted, and I actually don't vet hotels as much anymore like I used to, but if we check in and it doesn't smell right, or if I look around and it doesn't feel right, we will get out, or we'll either ask to get moved to a different room, or we'll leave that hotel. So we still are protective of ourselves, but it's almost more in a, oh yeah, like we should do this, rather than we have to, or we're in a really bad situation. Um, so yeah, well, like we just traveled recently and I took my air purifier. I did take my well call with me, and I actually didn't even take it because I felt great there, and I haven't taken it since I've been back. So it's kind of a dance of like trying to live like a healthy, normal person and take on that identity. I feel like my body follows suit when that is my mindset and my identity. Yet then, if something reminds me, like, hey, there's a wet ceiling tile or doesn't smell right in here, I go right back to my binders and, wash my clothes and don't go to that place anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds really manageable and
Yeah.
hopeful for people, I'm sure. It's nice. It's nice to hear all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. That it's possible. And it's this way for my whole family. There are four of us. We all have dreaded genetics and we are all living outside of the bubble with a certain level of precaution, but also as normal people. And we're all hanging in there 8 years post. And so if we can do it, I don't want to give anybody false, like, hey, don't, just go throw caution to the wind. I'm not saying that. But in due time, after several years of protecting your recovery and building that capacity and resilience, it may be possible that you can live fairly normally, almost like you have an allergy that you have to manage, but that's kind of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so hopeful. I know that so many people in the community, and thank you for sharing your story of recovery, because a lot of people, I think they heal from CIRS, and then there's kind of like this thing of like, I just don't want to deal with that anymore. I don't want to talk about it anymore. But these stories of hope are so important for people who are just getting into it, who have been stuck
Yeah.
in a chronically ill state for a really long time. So, what would your message be to those people, the ones who are still in kind of that state of overwhelm?
Yeah, I remember that state so well. I would just say trust the process. Um, find your people, find a community, people who make you feel safe and seen and like you're not alone. I think that's a huge component to healing when we feel supported. And when I say trust the process, maybe getting in, with a good clinician that you feel like you can kind of let down your guard. You don't feel like you have to be Googling everything they say to make sure it's right. Like you really feel like they've got you and they're listening to you and they're an expert in this and you can trust them and kind of just see if you can access that letdown response, that parasympathetic healing state where we can just trust, we can start to rest. Our body can actually digest food and detoxify when we feel like we can touch safety a little bit. And so I think I was the most overwhelmed when I was trying to do all of it at the same time. And I was trying to move too fast. I assumed that if I just got out of exposure really as soon as possible, like in whatever way possible, that I would feel better quicker. And I think I made a mess of things by trying to move too fast. I don't know if that makes sense, but we remediated our house ourselves and ruined it. I wasn't getting good sleep because we were staying up all night packing and cleaning. We ended up ordering pizza because I didn't have time to cook good food. I was moving too fast, trying to get out of the exposure that we made other mistakes. I traumatized my daughter. So, slow is fast sometimes, like one step at a time. Take care of yourself. Listen to your doctor, trust the process, find your people. That would be my advice there.
Well, I feel calmer just even listening to you say all of that.
Good.
Yeah, it's so important. And you mentioned finding community. And the part of that really is also including potentially a CIRS coach in your treatment team because the doctor is going to have the doctor duties and your family hopefully is going to be supportive, but they might not get it. The community you join, those are going to be people that get it, but a coach is going to help you really take what the doctor is telling you to do and apply it to your life exactly how you just described. Don't go too fast,
Yeah.
one thing at a time, build it out in a sustainable, maintainable way. And as we mentioned in the intro, Jenny is the OG CIRS coach. And I can't believe this illness was ever managed without coaches because there's just such a perfect spot for coaching in this whole treatment plan because there's just so many moving parts and
Yeah.
with the brain fog and everything else, you really need that kind of support. So first of all,
Yeah.
thank you for blazing that trail and being that for so many people. But I really want to make sure the audience knows all of the amazing services that you do for the CIRS community. So please.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for speaking highly of coaching. I am a huge fan of coaching, as I know you are. I think there's so much value in having that accountability partner, that person who can organize all of the overwhelm into maybe bite-sized action steps that feel right for each individual person. And it might be different for one person than the next. And being your cheerleader, celebrating the small successes along the way. And I love coaching. And that's one of the things that I offer is one-on-one coaching for the people who do feel that overwhelm or confusion with maybe their doctor's treatment plan and they want more handholding than what their doctor's office realistically can probably provide. I love that. So I do the coaching. Consulting is another thing I do, and that's a little different than coaching. And so I provide one-on-one consulting services, which is usually more like one-off. Someone might say, I don't really need the hand holding. I don't need to meet with you every week or every other week or every month, but I have this whole list of questions and it doesn't necessarily require a medical license. You don't necessarily need to be an IEP, but I have all these questions about CIRS or the Shoemaker Protocol or about, my thoughts for maybe next steps in which direction I should go. I love that as well. Hey, bring me all your questions. Let's dive in and let's help you feel more organized, empowered with your path. And so that's another thing that I offer is just the a la carte consulting. One of my favorite offerings is the Equipped to Overcome CIRS online course. And this is really my baby, you guys. So I guess this was back in 2019 when I first became a coach and proficiency partner. And I was working with all these individual clients, and I just realized they all had similar questions. They were kind of at similar places in their CIRS journey, and they all felt really lonely. And so I just thought, what if we get everybody together and we do this in a group? And so I came up with kind of a systematic program that would walk everybody through the main features of the Shoemaker Protocol and then some additional functional medicine, lifestyle components, and nervous system components. And I got this group together of my clients, and it was amazing. They all loved it. They met each other, and I think they still keep in touch. Like they got really close, through this healing journey. They found their tribe, and it was a cost-effective way for everybody to get the content and kind of the coaching, but without having to do it one-on-one. So I've since turned that live group coaching program into an online course. Still available as a live group coaching program for people who want the cohort and the live sessions. But some people were coming to me saying, I want all this content, but that time doesn't work. Or do you have it in a more cost-effective manner? So I dialed the cost back, kept all of the content in there, and it's now available as an online course. And some people call it coaching in a box because it's more than just educational material. Every module, there are 12 modules, every module has a theme, like a particular educational content. And then there's an implementation activity. And that's where participants are invited to actually go through a checklist or a little homework activity on how to figure out if this content applies to them. And so they interact with the material rather than just learning it cognitively and then moving on and getting more overwhelmed. So they feel like after every module, they've actually done the things, they've done the checklist before moving on to the next one. And then there's a nervous system practice involved with each module too. So by the time participants are done with the full 12 modules, they've built a toolbox of 12 nervous system practices that are they build on each other and they're sequential. So now they have these superpowers. They've learned how to support their nervous system the whole way through, and it's really cost effective. So they get coaching in a box. They get everything they need to know about CIRS and how to be an overcomer without having to pay for private coaching for folks who don't want that. Yeah.
That is so cool. You covered all the bases and thought of all the things. That's awesome. Sounds great.
Yeah. Well, and then I guess I should mention as part of that is the CIRS Healing Collective community. So what happened with that first group that I took through the course is it was over. We did it in 12 weeks. I've also offered it over 12 months, but that one we did in 12 weeks and the 12 weeks were over and everyone said, well, now what? Like, what do we do? And so we created a Facebook group That eventually morphed into a more professionally facilitated private community on a different platform. And now the CIRS Healing Collective has tons of people, very much like the CIRS Group, CIRS overcomers from around the world who are looking to connect and share information. And so that's something that people can join in either separately or as part of the Equipped to Overcome CIRS course. So there's another program that is really tailored towards folks who may be out of exposure. And they're really working more on their inner environment. So their outer environment is safe, but maybe they still have some more nervous system work to do, or they're still dialing in their diet, their mindset and perspective, maybe relationships, getting sleep back on board. That was such a big one for me, getting my sleep back, regaining their ability to exercise, things like that. So really kind of almost like rehab, if you will, like rehabilitation for post CIRS. So I have a program called Salugenics for CIRS. So Salu means health and Genesis is creation. So it's really about health creation rather than disease avoidance. And then it has the Gen X, which is kind of like genetic expression. So we're trying to invite well gene expression. And so it's a whole bunch of activities that do just that. We focus on all of those things that I just said so that we can have that resilience to relapse that we all want to have. So that's another program that I offer for folks who are a little farther on down in their healing journey.
It's amazing. I love it. What is the website for everybody to go to if they want to check
Yeah,
all
it's
that
all
stuff out?
found at simplifiedwellnessdesigns.com.
Awesome. We'll
Yeah,
definitely have that in the show notes, of course.
awesome. Thank you.
That's great. I love that you have something for kind of everybody at all the different stages of the
Yeah,
healing process. So that's
yeah,
fantastic.
absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
needed. So thank you for providing all of
You're
that.
so welcome. Yeah, it's a pleasure. I love working with people who are open to change. One of my favorite things that I see happen is when people experience something transformative through the suffering, and whether that's early on in the journey or later when they're doing salugenics, facilitating that pathway for people or walking alongside them as they experience those silver linings and that transformation that can happen because of suffering.
That's beautiful. And I know that we've had some feedback about your different offerings in our group. I think we have a lot of cross-pollination, and
Yeah.
no one has ever said a negative word about Jenny, ever, ever. I'd
Oh,
like, if someone did, I would be like, all right, we're going to the parking lot. We got to fight this out. I don't understand where you're coming from. Jenny is just a light to
oh,
this community and to everyone she interacts with. So thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate you.
thank you so much, you guys. And thank you for all that you do, for all the great information you're putting out there for your community. It really does take a village, and we're all a part of it. So it's fun to be doing this with you guys. Thanks for inviting me on your show. It's great to
Absolutely.
chat.
Thank you.
Well, that was so much fun. I know I've been fangirling about Jenny since our first CIRS X. Like, she's just so well put together, so professional, and such a beacon of hope in our
Yeah.
community.
I really meant that. I felt like calmer just listening to her talk through like how she navigates CIRS post-treatment and all of that. There's just something very calming and you know what? We got this about her tone. And I believe her and she did got this. Like her family healed. So very inspirational. I'm so glad we had her on.
Yeah, maybe we could convince her to do the audiobook version of the CIRS textbook.
I would absolutely purchase that 100%. That would be great.
But as always, guys, thanks so much for listening today. And if you are looking for more resources and support in your CIRS journey, you can join us over at the cirsgroup.com.
We will see you there.